Hello, so we'd like to look at a few questions from the Algebra 2 and trick review. Alright, so let's look at the first question first. Here it goes. 2 sine squared theta plus sine theta minus 1 equal to 0. Now, in fact, when you look into this one, you will realize that this can be factorable. Here, 2 sine theta and then sine theta. Now, two numbers multiply to -1, but when you the distributive property, we have to get the sign of theta. That means we have to put +1 here and -1 over here. Then, in this case, you will realize that based upon the first factor, sine theta has to be equal to 1/2. That means theta has to be equal to, yes, that's right, 30 degrees. But another angle that which we can think of 1/2 as, with the reference angle 30, will be 150-degree angle. Now, here, sine theta has to be equal to -1. Then we know that the theta has to be equal to 270 degrees. All right, so those are the three values. How about number 5? Here we get to realize that tangent theta minus radical 3 times tangent theta plus radical 3 would have been our equal to 0, our factoring with the radicals. But in this case, radical is good because we know the measure of the angle where the tangent ratio becomes radical 3. Yes, in fact, that's the 60 degrees. And then since, as you can see here, tangent theta can be a positive or negative square root of 3. That means we are looking at 4 angles. 4 angles with the reference angle is 60 degrees. So those are 60-degree measure. Second quadrant, it will be 120 degrees. Third quadrant will be 240 degrees. And fourth quadrant will be 300 degrees. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Here, as you can see, cosine theta is common. Then we have 2 sine theta plus 1 equal to 0. Here, cosine theta has to be equal to 0, or sine theta has to be equal to -1/2. In this case, we realize that theta has to be equal to, yes, that's right, 90 degrees or 270 degrees. Here we get to realize the sine has to be negative, so theta has to be third and fourth quadrant. With the ratio being 1/2, that means reference angle is 30 degrees. So we have 210 degrees or 330 degrees. Alright, now here, find to the nearest tenth of a degree the value of theta. Now technically we can do this one using the graphing calculator and get the answers right away. Now let me show you how you can do it. Here we have, make sure since the measures are in degrees, make sure that we set the mode as degrees. And window, we're going to set it up as 0 through 360 because that was the given values here. Now, and second thing which we can do is set it up as tangent. We're just going to put it 0, and then entire thing square. Now in this case we are squaring the tangent, not just x. And then we have minus 3 tangent x and plus 2. Now if you if you're to zoom it or graph it, you will see the values around here. So why don't we try to set the windows y minimum as -1 and then y maximum as +1. Then you'll see that that's 1 value, 2 value, 3 value, and 4 values. So let us try to put everything together. To calculate that, we can go for second trace, which will get you the calculator, and we will be looking for zeros. That's where things are equal to 0. So press number 2. Left bound. It's going to be around here somewhere. So if you keep on pressing, that's right. As you can see the cursor, just a bit left of the point that we want. And right bound is, it has to be right of the point that we want, which is right over here. Yes, that's right, it was 45 degrees. Now, next one would have been same idea. 0, number 2. Left bound over here. Right bound has to be past that. There it goes. 63 degrees. Now, we don't actually have to even find out the other 2 degrees because these are the reference angles which we can figure out the rest. So, therefore, thetas are 45 degrees and 63.4 degrees. Now the next one, which will be on the third quadrant, that's where the tangent is positive, because both values were positive here. Then it would have been 225 degrees. Next one will be 243.4 degrees. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Here, what if you don't sketch the graph? Can you still find it? Yes, you can. In this case, we get to realize that 5 cosine theta minus 2 times 5 cosine theta plus 2 has to be equal to 0. That means cosine theta has to be 2/5 or negative 2/5. That means let's try to figure out the reference angle here. So second cosine, which will get us the angle measure, and once you do this one, you will realize that angle measure was 66.4 degrees. So as you can see, cosine can be positive or negative. That means here we have angle theta has to be 66.4 degrees. Now this can be also possible in the fourth quadrant in case of cosine. So we end up getting that will be equal to 293.6 degrees. That will be another measure of the angle. And third one, when the ratio is negative, another value would have been 180 minus 66.4. So we end up getting 113.6 degrees. And the next one will be 246.4 degrees. 4 degrees. So those are the 4 values. Alright, let's look into secant. In this case, one thing which we can do, as you can see, is that this is factorable, where secant theta minus 3 and secant theta minus 4 has to be equal to 0. That means secant theta has to be equal to 3. That tells us that cosine, which is the reciprocal, cosine theta has to be 1/3 or 1/4 from the second one. When do you have that equal to be 1/3? So let's look at it. Once again, second cosine and 1/3. Then we realize the reference angle is 70.5. So here we have theta has to be 70.5 degrees. And if you have to be in the fourth quadrant where cosine is positive, we end up getting 289.5 degree angle. Now, how about 1/4? We can do exactly the same thing. 1/4 right over here. Then, as you can see, 75.5 degrees. So 75.5 degrees. And second one will be 360 minus this. So we end up getting 284.5 degrees. Alright, those are the 4 measure of the angles. Let's continue. Here, find to the nearest hundredth of a radian measure. In this case, 0 through 2 pi. So here we have, if I were to factor this one, then yes, tangent theta minus 2, and then tangent theta minus 3 would have been the factoring of this. So when do we have tangent theta to be equal to 2 or 3? Okay, we can use the calculator here. I'm just gonna arctangent of 2. Now notice that mode has to be in radian measure. Okay, so I just changed it, and then we end up getting 1.107. Now we're going to just calculate the second one too, and 3, 1.24. Okay, so if you're to look into this one, we get to realize, so tangent is positive when first and third quadrants. So one value would have been, theta has to be 1 to the nearest hundredth, so therefore 1.11 radian measure. And then the second value would have been here 1.25 radian measure. Now, then how about the other two values? Because we realized that tangent ratios are positive on the third quadrant. In order for that to be positive, then we have to add pi value. So pi is 3.14. So in this case, we'll end up getting 4.25 here, 4.39. So those are our answers. Alright, they want us to use the quadratic formula to find the nearest degree. Alright, so let's try to look into this one. So since this is not factorable, sine theta will be equal to 7 plus minus, we are using the quadratic formula here, and then negative 7 squared becomes 49, minus 4 times a, which is 3, and the c becomes negative 3, all over 6, 2 times of a. Then here we end up having 7 plus or minus square root of here. This has to be addition, so this becomes 9 times 4 becomes 36. 36 plus 49 becomes 85 over 6. So now what does that mean? That means so one value would have been 7 minus square root of 85, and then I gotta put the parentheses, insert the parentheses over here. Alright, divided by 6. So now that's what we end up getting, and then we have to go for arc sine of that. The answer, which we just calculated. Now this one has to be in degree mode, so mode will be changed back to degrees. Alright. Then we get negative 21.7 degrees. So here we have theta has to be negative 21.7 degrees to the nearest degree. That means negative 22. Now that in fact means 338 degrees. 22 degrees short from 360. That's one. Another one will be sine is negative on the third quadrant. That means we have 202 degrees, adding 22 from 180. Now, how about the other one? The other one is the same, except the middle value would have been positive. So second entry, that was our value. Alright, so we just have to change the middle one into positive. Alright, we just changed it into positive. And then arc sine of the answer, which we just calculated. Domain, it doesn't work. That means basically there's no values of such kind. So therefore, that's not going to work. All right. Here, how about this one? When you multiply by cosine, we'll end up getting 3 cosine squared theta plus cosine theta equals 1, which will be, I can subtract that into minus 1. Equals to 0. Now, how are we going to do it? Yes, just like before, cosine theta has to be equal to negative 1 plus or minus this one square, which is 1, minus 4 times a, which is equal to 3, times c becomes negative 1, all over 6. Then becomes negative 1 plus or minus, we have this expression to be 12 and 13 over 6. Now, in this case, if you have to calculate this one, so here we have negative 1 plus, parentheses, negative 1 plus radical 13 divided by 6. That's the first value, and then you can realize we're looking at second cosine of the answer. We get 64.23 degrees. So we couldn't write this one as 64 degrees. Here we have 64 degrees, or if you have to be on the fourth quadrant, this will be 296 degrees. All right, we gotta try for the other one. What if we have same thing except we have negative sign in the middle? Second entry, second entry. All right, so we're gonna change the sign of the middle value into subtraction. And then we're gonna apply the same thing. Second cosine of the answer. 140 degrees. So here we have next set of answers are 140 degrees because cosine was negative. Then the fact that it was 140 degrees, then 40 degrees must be the reference angle. Then the next one will be 220 degrees. All right. And that's it. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.